A young preacher fresh out of seminary thought that it would help him a lot if he went to join forces with the police for several months. And so he wanted to go and get a job as a policeman. And so this young preacher passed the physical exam. And then that's where I would have failed. And then was asked several questions in the interview section of the test. And at one point in the interview, he was asked, what would you do to disperse a frenzied crowd? And the young preacher thought for a moment, and then he said, I would ask them to say a prayer with me to take up an offering. Today is Mission Sunday, and we are asking that you prayerfully and intentionally give your offering today so that we can continue to support these missionaries that you've seen, these missions that you've seen, and others that are going on that we weren't able to share with you this morning. There is a lot that we support. If you haven't talked with your family, and those of you watching online, if you haven't talked with your spouse, if you haven't talked with your family about what you're going to give, I pray that you have that conversation. I pray that you don't give until you have that conversation, because my view of giving has changed lately. I heard a statement that really stepped on my toes and challenged the way that I've been giving to things. Hey, Tom, can you turn me up just a little bit? By the way, can we just give a round of applause to our tech guys in the back who do a great job each week? That's one of the hardest jobs to do, and you're only noticed typically when you mess up, right? And so it's not always the most job that gets you the most credit with people. It's easy to look bad and not always good, easy to look good. But our guys do a wonderful job. They've been so flexible. All the videos, all the technology, and for a while, the way that we've had to increase our online stuff with the pandemic, they've really been working hard, so thank you guys. But I read a statement recently that challenged the way that I've given to missions, and it said, you can't win the world to Christ on your spare cash. And I thought, ooh. Because the way that I give and have given in the past has often been that exact way. More times than not, actually. To when there's a special something that's going on, well, let me file all of the things that I have, all the wants and things I need to get, all the things I would like to get, what plans do we have, what vacations do I want to take, what trips do we have, and then I'm going to see what's left over, and now what can I give? And that statement really changed the way that I see that. So go home, talk with your spouse, pray about this. I'm excited about what we're going to be able to give. Here's what I believe about missions. Number one, a church without missions is a church without a mission. I think having and supporting mission works is vital to the health and life and welfare of the church. And I think that the cure for a sick church is to go on a missionary diet. The healing and spiritual growth are found in missions. So, before I get into this lesson this morning, here's what I wanted to say to you. Thank you. Thank you for your generosity. You've been so generous. Since I've been here almost 2 years now, I've seen your generosity on display in so many different ways. In taking care of a van for our youth, in supporting a capital campaign. There's so many things that you've been a part of. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your support for our local missions, the gifts that have been given, one-time gifts to help other family members out in our church. This is a giving church. Thank you for the gifts that you've given. And thank you in advance for your generosity today. I know it's going to be a blessing to all of those that we just worshiped with this morning. How cool is that they were here with us and that he read that scripture for us this morning. That was really neat. But this is what I love most about this place. Leander Church has a passion for sharing, helping, supporting people, both through local outreach and foreign missions. And I think that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it was a cold morning. There was a missionary candidate who wanted to go on a mission field, and so he's interviewing to see if, with this missionary board, and he's actually got this interview with the executor, they called him the examiner of the missions board. And so it's 3 a.m. when the meeting is called. And so the young man gets out of bed and he goes and he sits at the office, and he sat in the waiting room until 8 o'clock in the morning when the examiner finally showed up. And without a word of explanation about his 5-hour delay, the examiner just walked in and said, all right, let's go ahead and begin our interview. And so he said, first, I would like you to spell the word baker. And so the confused young man, just without hesitation, responded and said, Baker. Very good. I'm impressed. Now let's see what you know about figures. How much is 2 plus 2? And the young wannabe missionary said, 4. And examiner said, fine, thank you for your time. I will let you know the results of the interview tomorrow. And the applicant simply said, thank you for the opportunity, sir. And with that, he left the interview. And at the board meeting the next day, the examiner spoke highly of the applicant. He said, look, I found our guy. This young man has all the qualifications of a missionary that we are looking for. First, I tested him on self-denial. I told him to be at the office at 3 o'clock in the morning, guys. He left his warm bed and came out in the cold without a word of complaint. And then I examined him on his patience. I made him wait 5 hours to see me. And he didn't even question or complain about why I was late. And finally, I tested his humility. I asked him only a few questions that a small child could answer. And he showed no offense, no judgment about the questions. He simply gave the answer. He has all the characteristics to be the kind of missionary that we need for our mission. Church, it takes a special person to dedicate their life to sharing the gospel with others, doesn't it? I truly believe, here's what I think about it. We would all give more and pray harder for our missionaries if we traded places with them for one day and saw what they saw and experienced what they experienced. If you've ever had the blessing of being able to go on a mission trip and experience a mission yourself, then you've seen things and experienced things that will hang with you and stay with you forever. And if you haven't, I encourage you, it's never too late. I don't care how old you are and how you think there's no way I could do it. You should try to find a way to experience a mission field and get with a missionary. But of all the things that impacted me the most on the mission trips that I've been blessed to be able to take, the thing that sticks with me the most is the humility that I saw and the patience and joy and dedication that I saw in the missionaries that I was with. I mean, they loved everybody. And they served for hours, and they're dog tired. I'm ready to go back. I'm only there for a week. I'm ready to go back, hit the shower. I need some Gatorade. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm done. And these guys, no, they're still working, and they're busting it, and they're doing whatever it takes to help these people, and not to just help them find Christ. You get what I'm saying? Missionaries just love to help people, and it doesn't matter. And yes, if I can help them find Christ, that's my ultimate goal. But I'm also just there to help people. And they just love to help others. And so supporting missionaries in this Mission Sunday is so important to me. And I hope that it is to you. And so again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your continued support for our missionaries. Now, I want to get into our lesson really quickly this morning. You can go ahead and turn to John chapter 5. Okay? And that's where we're going to spend the rest of our time. And as you're turning there, I want to tell you an old story that's been around for many years. You've probably heard it before, but it's about the young man who was suffering from a string of bad luck. And things just weren't going his way until he stumbled on a magic lamp. And so he found this magic lamp, he rubs it, and a genie pops out of the magic lamp. And he promised to grant him 3 wishes. Pretty typical. So first, the young man says, I want a new sports car. Gives him a sports car. Second, he said, I want to be the wealthiest person in the world. He has all the money he could ever want. And then third, I want to think about it for a while. I'm not really sure. The genie said, that's fine. And so later that day, the young man's driving in his new sports car. He's singing along with the radio, and the famous commercial comes on, and he's singing along and says, oh, I wish I were an Oscar Mayer wiener. I know, it's bad. It's bad. I hesitated putting that one in here. But I don't know about you, church, but in all seriousness, here's my point. I am so thankful that our God is not a wish granter, but that he's a miracle worker. Amen? And so he doesn't just give us what we ask for. He He gives us and provides us with exactly what we need, even when we don't know that we need it. And that is the beauty of the miracle worker. So in our series on miracles, we are looking through the Gospel of John, and we are seeing the top 10 highlights of the Sports Center plays of Jesus. Right? It's the 10 big miracles. And we're not even looking and touching on 3 of them, which are the big 3 that we talk on all the time. The incarnation and the resurrection and the ascension, which are huge. But we're looking at the 7 other big miracles in the Gospel of John. And this week we are hitting into our 3rd miracle. But my aim for you through this series is that you will see that God is the one who can make your impossible possible again. Jesus can perform a miracle in your life, and he can perform it for you at the perfect moment. That's what's so amazing about the miracle worker, Jesus. And so, as I've said before, if you follow Jesus closely enough for long enough, you are bound to find yourself in the midst of the miraculous. And great things will happen to you. The unexplainable will happen in your life, and I believe that wholeheartedly. But this morning, what I hope to do with this miracle is I want to give you some hope. That's my point. And so this lesson is not for everybody. This lesson is specifically, I know there's someone right now who's watching online, who is here with us, that this is the message that you need right now. You are struggling, and you are tired, and you are weary, and you're waiting on God to just perform a miracle because you feel like you can't hang in there anymore. And you're on the verge of giving up hope in your life. If that is you, this is a message for you. And here's what I've got to tell you. God will give solutions to your unsolvable problems. In 1939, true story, George Dantzig enrolled as a graduate student at the University of California, and he was studying statistics under the professor, Dr. Jerzy Neyman. Now, at the beginning of one class session, Dr. Neyman chalked on the chalkboard for the whole statistics class 2 of the statistics at the time, 2 of statistics' most famous unsolvable problems that they had not found answers to. But George happened to be late to class that day, and he missed that disclaimer, and he thought that those problems were their homework. And so he writes them down in his notebook, and he goes home and he begins to work on them and then turns them in later. Now, it took a little longer than he thought, but George ultimately solved both of statistics' unsolvable problems. And so on a Sunday morning, 6 weeks later, an ecstatic Dr. Neyman comes knocking on his door to share the news with him. And a bewildered George answers the door and gets embarrassed because he thinks that his teacher's there telling him that his homework was overdue and that he was counted off for those problems. And that's when Dr. Neyman informed George that he had solved the 2 unsolvable problems. And from that point on, there were so many things. I wish I could have listed them out, but I don't have time. That you can look up George. And he had accomplished so many things in the statistic realm, in the physics realm, and became a great teacher of other geniuses. And there are still things that have influenced the way that we function today because of this man. But the thing that he said years later was this: if somebody had told me that those 2 famous problems were unsolvable, I probably never would have attempted to solve them. Folks, God can turn our impossibilities into realities if we will only have faith. The word impossible, it should not be a word in our language as a Christian. I think, God, for him, this would be one of the curse words. Don't say impossible. Because Jesus tells us very plainly and very clearly, nothing is impossible with God. And so George solved these problems because he didn't know that they couldn't be done. And I think that is the secret to finding the miraculous in your life. Jesus himself again said, with God, all things are possible. So here's the way that I'm going to say it this morning. Faith doesn't ignore the doctor's diagnosis, folks. It hears the doctor. It believes the doctor. But it seeks a second opinion from God. Too many prayers are left unprayed because the prayer assumes that the answer is going to be no. But our God is a miracle worker, not a wish granter. And he can perform a miracle in your life. And we're about to see another example of the miraculous. So looking at John chapter 5, we're going to start in verse 1. And here's what it says. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. Now, there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here, a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, and the paralyzed. Before we go on, I have to stop there and say Jesus is finally leaving Cana. If you remember, our first 2 miracles that Jesus performs are at what he would consider and scholars consider to be home base for Jesus, Cana. And there he is, and he's performed the water to wine, and he also did the healing of the official son. And so Cana has experienced the miracles. That's home base for him. His mom was there. He's at a wedding feast because these are probably people that he knows and loves. This is family that's around. These are people I've grown up with here in Cana. But now it's time for me to spread out. And that's what mission work is all about, folks. Mission starts in your family. It begins in your home, but it doesn't stay there. It has to leave out. And so your first mission is with your own family, but it doesn't stay there. And so Jesus, he's the first missionary. Here he comes as a missionary. He goes to the pool. Why does he go to the pool of Bethesda? Because there's sick people there. And I've got a job to do. And I've got a message to spread. And so he goes out and he finds them. I believe that the light that shines farthest from home will shine brightest at home. And that's what I believe about mission work as well. So, verse 5 now. One was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." It was believed in that time that the stirring of these waters at the pool of Bethesda were miraculous, that they would heal, which was not true, but it was believed by many. Just as many believed in false gods, this was a way for them to find healing. And so these sick people would come down to this water, but it was the first one that would get into the water is the one who would find healing. And so it was almost a race from a bunch of sick and broken people trying to get down into the water, because they're desperate to get out of the situation that they're in. They're desperate to find healing. You ever felt desperate before? And you'll look anywhere when where you are is not comfortable, right? Get me out. When you find yourself in a hopeless situation, an impossible situation, you'll look anywhere for help. And so he says, while I'm trying to get in, somebody else keeps going down ahead of me. I can't get there. And so then Jesus said to him, "Go get down in the pool. I'll make sure that you're first in line tomorrow." Is that what he said? No. He said, "Get up, pick up your mat, and walk." And at once the man was cured, and he picked up his mat and he walked. This is an amazing miracle. And the day on which this took place was the Sabbath. And so Jews said to the man who had been healed, listen to this, "It's the Sabbath. The law forbids you to heal?" What does it say? What? This guy's been laying there for 38 years. I mean, this is an awesome moment. Have you ever seen somebody who's not able to use their legs? And when you're not able to use your muscles, what happens, man? They shrink up, and soon there's not enough muscle structure to be there to even support your weight. It's a miracle that his legs could support him. I think as Jesus casts this miracle and performs this miracle for this man, they're all witnessing muscles growing back and legs being strengthened before their very eyes. This is huge. Now, at times the Pharisees get upset because they're upset that Jesus performed a miracle, but they're not upset that Jesus performed a miracle. They're upset because he's carrying his mat on the Sabbath. The Pharisees miss the miracle because they're too stuck in their traditions and in their rightness. According to the law, that's not the right way to do things. And so they're holding that and elevating it so high that they miss the miraculous moment of Jesus working in their midst. And they don't even see it. And my prayer is that we won't be those people. That we won't miss the miraculous because we're too focused on being meticulous. But that we'll get our eyes up from the right way to do things. And the right way to get things done. And we will look out and we'll see Jesus perform the miracle. Let me finish my text. So then the man who was healed had no idea who it was. Verse 12. And so they asked him, who is this fellow who told you to pick up your mat and walk? And the man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Where I want to focus on, though, is this. Of all the things you've gotten from me this morning, this is what I want you to walk away with. Look at verse 6. It says, when Jesus saw him lying there, he learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, and he asked him, do you want to get well? Is that I'll use a different word. Is that a dumb question? Or what? Right? Like if I'm standing around and I'm Jesus' disciples, even like I'm like, yeah, Jesus is the man. And Jesus looks down at this invalid who's been laying here for 38 years. I mean, this invalid, Jesus, it said he learned of his conditions. This man's talking to him and telling him his situation. And Jesus' response is to look at him and to say, well, sir, I got a question for you. Do you want to get well? I mean, it's almost insulting. Like it's so rhetorical, right? Like, well, duh. I mean, right? Like, you see what I'm saying? I almost see it humorous here because I'm going, Jesus, what are you doing? You're almost insulting this man. If I'm there, I might be like, ease up, Jesus. Cool it a bit. Like, this is not typical, but then I looked at the text a little bit closer and I noticed something different. It is the time that the man has been an invalid that prompted Jesus to ask the question. Did you notice that? It says, when he learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, then he asked him, do you want to get well? And I realized Jesus isn't being offensive here. Of course not. I know Jesus. He's not being offensive. He's not asking a rhetorical question. He's genuinely questioning whether this man is ready to get and to receive his healing, because he's going to have to change his way of life in order to receive it. Church, there's a hard lesson that we have to learn here. And it's honestly one of the most difficult lessons that we as Christians have to learn. You can't help the person who needs it if they don't want it. The thief on the cross is case in point. He's 6 feet away from his salvation, and yet he curses the only one who could help him. And it's one of the most painful things for us to go through, isn't it? Someone that we love is hurting, and we know that we can provide the help that they need, that Jesus can provide the help that they need, that we can lead them to a better way of life, and yet there are people who aren't willing to receive that help. Back when I was a youth minister, when one of my kiddos was in his senior year, he had been with me. He decided to run away from home, and he rebelled against his parents, he rebelled against the church, and wanted to do things his own way. And so my heart would break, because I remember I'm driving down the street. I can picture the street, and the first time I saw him, I'm driving down the street, and there's my youth kid walking on the side of the road, dirty and ragged. Half the time he wasn't wearing a shirt. His hair's all matted. He's as skinny as a rail. And he's just walking slowly and methodically. And my heart would just break. And so one day, finally, it's been going on for weeks. And I see him again on the side of the road. And I thought, I'm picking him up. I can't take this. And so I stopped and I'm like, JP, come on, man. Hop in. I'll take you out to get some food. Do you want some food? And he said, yeah. Oh, man, I would love that. So I went and took him out and got him some food. It was me and another guy from church. We took him out. And we're sitting there, we're eating, and he was so grateful for the food. And I asked him, hey, do you want some help? And he said, yes. Yes, please. And he said, I do. I really want some help. And I said, man, listen, JP, I can change your life right now. Not me, but Christ can. But we have the tools in place at our church. We had Celebrate Recovery Ministry, which, by the way, is going to be an awesome tool for situations like this, by the way. And I used it in that moment. And I said, we've got Celebrate Recovery. I'd like for you to start attending Celebrate Recovery. Come back to church. We'll put you in a recovery house for free. You'll have a bed. You'll have a home. If you'll admit to the drug problem that you've got, and if you'll admit that you were wrong and you'll just come back, we'll get you a job and you can start to work and get your own money. We will change your life right now. And he said, no, I don't want that. Senior, high school senior, I don't want that. It broke my heart. And so yes, JP wanted help, but JP didn't want to have to change his way of life to receive it. Right? What I learned that day was a very hard lesson and a very real lesson, and I realized that everyone wants help, but not everybody's willing to do what it takes to receive it. Now, what was really interesting is this does not happen often, I promise you, but I happened to have some cash on hand, and I had a $100 bill on a clip in my wallet. I think right now, there's a empty receipt there. Okay, it was very rare. It was a very rare moment, but it was my money clip. I had a $100 bill sticking on it, and he said at the end of our meal, he said, "Could you give me some money?" And he clearly sees my $100 bill, and so I picked it up, and I said, "I could give you this right now." But JP, me giving you a handout right now, I love you too much to give you this. Because I'm offering you something greater than this. I did tell him, hey, I'll give you this right now if you come to the Celebrate Recovery House. So I tried to bribe him a little bit, And he said no, he didn't want it. And so I ended up saying, well, where do you want me to drop you off? And he wanted me to drop him off in front of a cigarette shop. I said, no, I'll drop you off in the coffee shop close by. If you really want to walk there, you're going to have to walk there. Jesus' question's not that bad, huh? When you put it in that perspective, he looks at a man who's been invalid for 38 years, almost 4 decades of his life has been spent on this security mat next to the pool at Bethesda, trying to beg for his way of life, because he's begging, but also to receive the healing in that moment. And Jesus asks him a great question. He says, do you want to get well? And I imagine that question sat like a ton of bricks on the invalid. I don't know how quickly he responded. I imagine, the way I see this story, it took him a while. Because Jesus doesn't ask a question because he doesn't know the answer. Jesus always has a purpose for asking a question, and it's for the one who he's asking it to. And he wants this invalid to search within himself and to say, do I want to be healed? And Jesus doesn't mean want like a genie granting a wish. Jesus rather means, I think he would define want as the sanctified desire and the matching discipline to do what needs to be done, no matter how hard or how long it takes for me to get out of the situation that I'm in. That's what desire means. So when Jesus says, do you want to be healed? He's not saying, well, do you want it like you want some fajitas right now because Nathan's going a little long? No, that's not what he's talking about. He says, do you want it more than anything else in your life? And are you willing to do what it takes to have the healing? No matter what goal you're trying to achieve or problem you're trying to solve, you have to want it more than the pain that will be inflicted upon you in the process to attain it. So let me ask you a question this morning, church. Do you want to get well? Because it's easy to become accustomed to our crutches. This man's world consisted of that spot at the pool on the same mat begging for 4 decades. And while it was monotonous, I'm sure he got tired of it some days. It was known and it was safe. And I've learned how to beg. I don't know how to walk. I don't know how to work. But listen to me today. If you want to get well, you can't keep sitting on your security blanket doing the same thing day after day, folks. When Jesus told the invalid to get up and walk, he told him to do something that he had never done, at least for 38 years. And that's why Jesus asked him if he wanted to get well. He didn't assume the man's answer was going to be yes. He asked him a genuine question, but that's what it takes to experience the miraculous. You can't keep doing what you've always done if you want to experience a miracle from Jesus. In fact, you might just have to do something you've never done before. You're going to have to worship like never before, pray like never before. You may have to hurt and fail like never before. You're going to have to commit to Jesus like never before. You're going to have to give up that sin. You're going to have to give up your comfort. Change your friends might even be something you have to do. You might have to change your location. You may have to change your heart. But if you want healing, you're going to have to change the equation of your life by subtracting something or adding something. You have to do something less, do something more, or at least do something different. Do you want to get well? Do you want to get well? I think that is a great question. It's a powerful question. And it's a question that has the potential to change your life. And because the man was ready to do what it takes in our story, to do what he had never done before, his weak legs begin to strengthen in front of everyone. And he picks up the mat that carried him for 38 years, and he puts it on his shoulders, and he walks it around. And that's what the miraculous Jesus can do in your life. And so for the first time ever, his security blanket isn't supporting him, but he's towing it. But tomorrow, he understands. It's time for me to work. It's time for me to learn to run and jump. It's time for me to do some things I've never done before. But he was willing to take that step for the healing that would come in his life. Listen to me, Jesus is asking you the same question this morning. The question is not, can Jesus do the impossible? The question is, do you want to get well more than you want the next breath of air? If you're sick of being sick and you're tired of feeling stuck and you're tired of being alone, and if you're ready for God to come into your situation and to give you hope for the first time in a long time, if you're ready for God, the God of God, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, the miracle worker, not the wish granter, to come into your life and to perform a miracle in your life, if you're ready for that, then he can make your impossible possible this morning. And so if you're ready for that, I'm going to ask that you come forward and that you let us pray with you, for you, to the great miracle worker in your life. And I pray that you find some hope in your life this morning. Whatever you need, won't you come while together we stand and sing.